This is Robert with Pioneer Smokehouses, and today we're going to do some hot smoked salmon in the Cuisinart COS-330 30-inch electric smoker. That was a mouthful. So now that we've got that out of the way, I'm going to start by telling you that I was going to put off the PID thing and stick with the analog tests, but honestly, the salmon is some really good looking fish and I didn't want to take any chances. So let's go ahead and run that PID test today on this cook. First thing, let's go ahead and set that and get this thing preheated, because it's going to take a little bit of time for all that to work and the PID to really take full control of the situation. I'm going to go ahead and open this up. And I'm going to insert the PID's thermometer. It's also known as the thermocouple. I'm going to run it along here so it's completely out of our way. And then right through there. And then it's just going to sit right up in the back there. So that way it will get a reading. And then again, this will stay out of our way. We'll just keep that back there a little bit. And it'll drop out the bottom of the door, which is fine for me. Next thing I'm going to do, I'm going to plug in the PID so it'll have a chance to boot up. And then I'm going to plug in the smoker to the PID. Now we can see it's set for 225. I'm going to turn the smoker to the maximum setting, and then we're going to change that. I think, go here, over here. Let's see if that's it. Yep. Now for now, I'm going to set it to 355. So somewhere around the 350 degree range to 355 is fine. With the salmon, I'd actually like to be a little hotter than cooler. Now I'm looking up here and I can see the light is on. Also on the PID, there's a little red light right here. And that is what the thermocouple is reading, which is 68.8 degrees. I'm going to go ahead and close that. And we're going to give this thing a good 20 minutes maybe to get preheated. Now on a lot of the smokers with a lower powered element, it takes a little bit longer for them to preheat and get balanced out. But this smoker's element power to the size of the smoker itself is pretty good. So it should be able to preheat relatively quickly, and then the PID should be able to kind of adjust the power curve pretty well. So I'm going to go ahead and run in the house and get some gloves and get the salmon, and I'll be right back out. I'm back with the salmon, and let's go ahead and check on the PID real quick here. Now, if you look at the close-up here, you can see we're at 288 degrees, and the element is still on, and it looks like it's having a little bit of trouble getting much higher than that. There is a little bit of residual smoke coming out. We're going to go ahead and we're going to move forward, and we'll just check the doneness of the salmon as we go. So let's go ahead and take a look at that salmon. So just for your reference, this is a coho or silver salmon, and this is half of a fillet, the front section. The front section has bones in it. So if you put it back like that, you'll see there's all your pieces right there. This is the belly section. Always eat that, never throw it away, but I kind of like to eat it separately from the main part because it's a lot fattier and it just eats a little bit differently. And then we have the rib cage, and this is the top side. In there, there's a row of bones that runs right through there. If you want, you can pick them out with a pair of pliers beforehand or tweezers, but I never do. Now today, we're going to use some cracked pepper, lemon, Kinder seasoning. Now I'm going to go ahead and sprinkle it lightly. There is salt in it, so I don't want to overdo it. All right, and then there is a little bit of pepper in here, but obviously not enough for me. So we'll get a little shake on my wife's piece here, and I always give her the piece without the bones. And then we're going to be pretty liberal on my piece here, a little bit more than that. And then on the belly, we're definitely going to do a good amount on that one. And there you go. It's really simple. There's nothing much more to do. Now I'm going to wait a couple of seconds and let it kind of get a little moisture in it from the salmon, and then I'm going to pat it down. And we didn't get hardly any of that on the gloves, so that's always a good sign. Now I brought out a grill mat. Of course, you knew I would. And then we'll set this one right here, and this one here, and then here. We want them close together, but we don't want them to touch. So we want just a little bit of gap between them so that way the smoke and the heat can flow freely. Now I'm going to go ahead and just transfer this like I always do in one motion with the whole tray full. I'll take it and lay it right in here on this top shelf. Should be the warmest location. I'm going to close the door for a second while I turn on the other thermometer. I'm going to hold this up because I don't have the close-up cam pointed over here. And this is the ThermoPro thermometer, and it will give us the reading at that shelf from its independent reading separate from the PID. PID is saying it's 266, and this one's saying it's 261. That's probably about right in between because this is usually a degree or two under. Oh, now it's 264. Yeah, I think it just needed to catch up a little bit. Next thing I'm going to do is I'm going to take the other thermometer here and I'm going to go ahead and plug that in. Now this is set to 165, but we don't necessarily need it at 165. We're probably closer to about 150 for salmon. I'm going to take it and just slide it in there as evenly as possible, nice and flat, right past the middle there. Push that tray back just a little bit, so that way we can close the door and it doesn't interfere with it. And just like that, boom. Gonna tighten this down a little bit so the door closes just a little tighter. I'll leave that for 1 second because now that everything is heated up, I'm gonna add some wood chips. For today, I'm gonna do it without the lid. And one of the reasons I'm doing that is because we put in the tin foil. So I wanna try running the pan just straight open without a lid and see if that makes a difference in how it performs. I thought it was a little light on smoke on the last cook, but my wife said that it had plenty of smoke. So somewhere is a happy medium there, and I don't know what it is. Today I'm going to use the Smokehouse wood chip blend. That's this one here. I would probably avoid using the hickory or the mesquite for salmon. Something lighter like alder or even apple or cherry would be okay. I don't like to add the apple or cherry flavor to salmon necessarily. And this is probably twice the amount of wood chips that we need. So maybe I'm going to take a little bit of that out. So I'll be right back. Okay, so now I put in about what I'm actually thinking we need here. And let's see if we can get a close-up of that. That's about what I want to go with. I don't want to overpower the salmon at all. And plus, I want it to burn up and get smoldering real quickly. So I'm going to go ahead and I'll just set this down while I load this back in. Now the reason that I don't want to take any chance and load more is because there's really no way to remove this pan. Once I put it in here, it's got to burn. I would have to use a pair of hot tongs or something to get it out of here, but it's just too close to the element. It's going to be too hot to deal with. And we've got it latched down, and we've dropped down to about 236, and I'm just going to keep an eye on it for a couple of minutes. and make sure it heads back up. Now, the main thing that we're worried about is the temperature on the inside of the salmon, and that's what we're going to monitor here with the ThermoPro probe thermometer. So let's go ahead and let that thing work, and I'll be back in, I don't know, 30 minutes for me and 1 second for you. Well, I'm back, and it's been almost a half an hour, pretty close. And if you look real close here, you can see that we've got smoke coming out here. And I deliberately leave this just a little loose so that way we can get good smoke flow. Now, before I open this up, I want to give you some observations. We've got 250 on the Cuisinart dial. Down here, we have 281 on the PID and 291 on the ThermoPro. I'm going to say it's probably just a little bit more than 281, maybe about 285. But on the regulator, the actual controls that come with the Cuisinart, it's set to full and it keeps turning off. So that means that this is the top temperature of that regulator. Now, I don't know if it can be adjusted. I haven't found anywhere in the instructions where it can be. But that might be something that you might want to look into, possibly an upgrade of that controller, because this element can put out way more heat. This smoker can handle way more heat. This solid metal body. Now, that right there is lowering our cooking temperature from the target of 350 down to 282. Now, that temperature is perfectly acceptable for everything other than, say, poultry. If you wanted to do chicken, that's really the bottom end of a chicken temperature. You really want to do chicken up in the 300 to 325 range to keep that skin from being rubbery. There's finesse tricks that you can try by drying out the skin with salt or baking powder. But I say that you should just heat it up a little bit more and maybe even consider a blowtorch. That's what I'm going to do next time. Now let's go ahead and pop this thing open and take a look. It has gone up a couple of degrees, but I wanted to wait so you could see the smoke come out. And here we go. And here's the poof of smoke. And look at that. Wood chips are smoking great. I like it with the cover off. I can see what's going on in there. And the salmon looks good. We're starting to separate over here, which means that this one is actually a little bit higher temperature than the piece with the thermometer in it. At this point, we're going to let it keep cooking. We're only at 117 on the thicker piece of an internal temperature, so we're nowhere near ready. I'm going to go get a paper towel and blot a little bit of that fat off the thinner piece, and if it needs to be pulled early, then I will do that and continue cooking my piece for the video. So I'll be right back. I am back, and let's go through a few observations before we do anything else. First thing I want to point out is the PID is showing 296, and this thing, it's on right this second, but it was off when I looked right before I started the camera. So it's been bouncing right around 297. And then the ThermoPro is showing that the temperature on the cooking shelf is 254, but I think it's probably a little off there. That ThermoPro probe has been overheated a couple of times, so I think we're getting some misreadings on that one. The internal probe is 145, so our salmon is done. And I'm sure that my wife's is a little warmer than that. I looked at it and I'm like, it looks fine, so we're going to let it roll. I'll try to get a close-up of this. We've got 275 on the thermometer on here. So, and I know that one always reads low, so I'm inclined to trust the PID. Let's go ahead and get a close-up of the thermometer. And that's 275 on here. And again, we know that one runs a little bit low, so I'm inclined to trust the PID and go with that. Now let's go ahead and get that salmon out. Open that up, and that looks wonderful. Now typically, for most applications, I'd be able to grab the thermometer, but at this temperature, I just don't feel comfortable going ahead right after it. So we'll give it a try pulling it out with the fork, and if that doesn't work, then I'll go grab one of the gloves. Yeah, a little firm in the salmon. I'll be right back. This is one of my Weber hot gloves, and these are really nice knit gloves with silicone grip. So I'm going to go ahead and I'm just going to put my thumb on the salmon and pull this right on out of there just like that, no problem. Then I'm going to put that back in here to let it stay hot so it'll be easier to clean. Then I went ahead and just used a tray with a rack in it. And just like that, we got it out of there. There's some drips on the foil pan down here. If I were cooking fish, I would leave this foil tray in there and use it one more time. But if I cook something different, then that foil tray is going to go away because I don't want that fish oil scenting my other food. And go ahead and close this. Let it come back to temperature. As soon as it comes up to full temperature, I'll turn it off, and that'll be it for it. All the mess is on the grill mat, which is great. I'm going to go ahead and I'm going to transfer my salmon over to this plate. I'm going to go ahead and hold this up there so you can get a good look at it. So look at that close up and you can see how light, the color is perfect, and look how flaky it is. Look at that. Boy, that looks good. Let's go ahead and get that little taste. I'm curious to see how good that Kinder is. I've been making my own lemon pepper for years with lemon zest dried and also with lemongrass. And that's been great. It works really good for baking, especially if you add a little bit of butter to the top. This is nice, and it has a little bit of salt in it, which I don't normally put in there, but it's the perfect amount. And again, I added the pepper to it. I think the next time that I cook some salmon, I think we're going to go with the Cosmos Cajun because I love that Cajun, but it's not spicy enough for me. My wife thinks it's perfect, of course. I got to get one more piece of this before we go. This edge piece, these are always one of the best. Yeah, and it is the best. Let's do a little summary. First, I went ahead and I set the smoker so that way it would preheat. I added the PID this time because I wanted to get a really good idea of what was going on in there and to control the temperature a lot because I didn't want to overcook the salmon. I wanted no chance of that. Undercook, it just takes more time, but overcook, you end up with bad salmon. And this is amazing fish that we caught yesterday, so I definitely didn't want to be in that situation. When we went through this and tried to get it up to the temperature that I wanted, which was 350, the smoker would not get up there because the temperature setting on the main controller kept shutting off, and the temperature range varied from 280 to 290 depending, but most of the time we were running right around 290 for the entirety of the cook, which is fine. You can cook salmon at that. You can cook almost anything at that, especially like 275 is a perfect temperature for a pork butt. 225 is a perfect temperature for a brisket. And many foods will cook fine in that temperature range. I would avoid the poultry at this point. However, the smoke worked out great when I put that pan in there without the lid on it and a small amount of wood chips. It smoked excellently, and I can taste that it's just the right amount of smoke. By pulling some of those chips out, I think I saved the day. And it just cooked right along and stayed consistent with the help of the PID, of course, the entire time. If you're cooking at the maximum temperature of the unit, I don't see any reason to worry about the PID. Set it on the maximum temperature, and it's going to be just under 300. So you'll want to double check that with your own thermometer. I would use a probe on the grill grate to know that for sure and run it a couple of times and see what happens. But it was pretty consistent on the top temperature, so that you can adjust your cook to that. Now, if you saw anything you like in the video, there will be affiliate links below. I'll get compensated for that, but that won't cost you anything. Of course, below that, as soon as the review article comes up, will be directly in the first link, and below that will be a link on smoking salmon. So, thanks for watching, and have a great day.